Hey guys, it's Sign here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we're doing another book chatter episode. Today we're looking at The Rise of Lords, which is Volume 3 and the omnibus editions of Cradle by wight, which means it covers Uncrowned, Wintersteel, and Bloodlines, I think is what they're called, which is the part of the story that focuses on the Uncrowned tournament, getting through it, and then the beginning of the end of the story, right? And of course, the return to Sacred Valley. So, I don't know, if you thought about the story in arcs, I don't know which arc this would be, but it's basically the third portion of the story within, like, Will Wight's definitions, right? But, since it is kind of like an anime-esque type book, or a manga type book, you could consider each kind of major plot line its own arc, and then each of these volumes as, like, a saga, right? Like, this is the, Lord Saga, if you want to call it that. And the previous ones are the Gold Saga and the Foundation Saga, right? But within them, each of them has an arc, right? Like, Book 1, Unsold, is basically its own story. It's the introductory arc, but it's also the, getting out of Sacred Valley arc, whatever you want to call it. And then Books 2 and 3 are their own arc. I don't really have a good name for it, but basically getting to Black Flame City. And then Book 4 and 5, I think, would have their own arc. Whenever the fight against Jay Long happens, it's the end of an arc, right? And then the Skysworn stuff would be its own kind of arc into Ghostwater, and then the Uncrowned tournament, of course, it's its own arc, and then the results of that would be their own arc, and then returning to Sacred Valley, it's its own arc, and then everything else is like the Dreadlord's arc, or whatever you want to call it. So maybe arc 5 and 6 or something like that, if you want to look at it that way, which I do like looking at it that way, because it makes it more similar to manga, and it would make it easier for me to recommend it to other people that are not really fantasy readers, right? So that's why I like looking at things like that, but it's not really that important, although it is kind of one of the conversation topics that I wanted to talk about here. So moving on to the second one, we have character changes, because I think that it's been really cool to see that Cradle was like your basic like battle shonen type thing, right? Where every time it was like there's a new challenge, the way to beat that challenge is to train and grow stronger, and eventually you do, right? And hopefully along the way your character develops some motivation and some interest beyond the basics, but usually they don't really until there's an arc that really directly correlates to them growing as people, right? And this storyline is basically that. It is that arc where the characters have to grow, and they have to grow by being separated from each other. So Linden is sent to Kuramalis's home in Moongrave, and Yaren is left at Black Flame, right? And so they're separate from each other. They have to grow, they have to develop, and Linden actually has been separated even from Orthos as well. So he really is by himself. I mean, as by himself as he can be with Dross and Little Blue, but Dross is basically a reflection of himself, right, to some extent, and Blue is someone that doesn't really have the ability to share her thoughts and feelings with him properly, and so for the vast majority of the time, he's basically as alone as he can be, and through that, he develops and grows and understands, right? Especially in the middle portion of the story, right? The fact that I like about it is, of course, that to become an underlord, to become a overlord, and then to become an arc lord, you have to understand yourself fundamentally, and that like understanding of yourself actually is growth, right? And the reason I like it is because that is actually how it reflects on real life. Like, yeah, you can grow by learning and by training, but at the same time, you have to grow mentally, right? You have to develop yourself. You have to learn how to undo some things that you learned as a child through your traumas, or you have to learn how to lean into those things in order to develop yourself better, or whatever the case might be. And the overlord or the lord, revelations are that in the context of the story, right? And I really like that that advancement is not purely about developing your skills anymore, that it's about developing yourself, your inner understanding, because it's something that I don't really see all that often in stories, right? Of course, the biggest example that I can think of that does have something like this is the Stormlight Archive, right? But Will Wight is a big fan of the Stormlight Archive, so a lot of this stuff is probably based around some of the same concepts as what we see in Stormlight, right? So I can see that. I can see that development. Of course, I don't really read actual Chinese wuxia or Shishan novels, right? I think that's how you say that. Wuxia and Xia, right? I don't really read those novels. I've never read like a proper Chinese one, but I assume that there is some element of self-revelation that needs to happen through those, and so he's taking that kind of like Stormlight Archive, like face your trauma in order to grow kind of element, and he's turning it into this like power scaling thing that fits with manga and anime, and I really love that, right? I also like that the romance grows through the separation, like especially through Mercy asking Linden about it, right? Like she's friends with both Linden and Yeren. She likes both of them. She enjoys their company, and she knows that they're very, very, very attached to each other. And she wonders if this is something that they care about. And of course they do. Linden does like Yeren. He appreciates her as a person, as an individual, but also he does have like a weird attachment to her because she's the first person he met on his journey out of Sacred Valley, and also the person that's been with him the longest, right? And so partially it's like, yeah, these people would be drawn to each other, and partially it's that like high school sweetheart kind of thing where it's like, well, they've known each other for so long and they've been together for so long, they might as well just date and get married, right? Which maybe is not that great because I don't know how like in real life how often those marriages actually end up working properly. Because they're not about who you are as an individual and finding that good person that fits with that kind of need, but rather it's about like proximity, which is like how most people make friends to begin with, right? But eventually you end up having to move on from that and grow as an individual and find people that actually match your needs, right? And you match theirs, right? And so there is kind of an element there that could be like, oh, maybe they're not really meant for each other. Maybe Linden could have chosen someone else, maybe Grace or Mercy or Jay Chen or whoever, right? But thankfully he does stick with Yeren throughout this part of the novels, and we get to see that he does care about her, he loves her, and he's very awkward, but still he does try to at least romance her a little bit, particularly because Mercy wants him to, right? And I like that. I think it's fun. The kiss there at the end of Winter Steel is also really great. I really liked it. I think that it's not this awesome like clash of characters and lust and all this stuff. It's a very chaste kind of moment, but it is a good one. It is kind of reminding me of something like when Will and what's her name, Keira Knightley's character in the Pirates of the Caribbean, I can't remember her name right now. I want to say Elizabeth. Will and Elizabeth. Elizabeth Swann get married at the end of the third movie, right? When they're fighting for their lives, they're getting married. They have that beautiful kiss as the tsunami is coming over the Black Pearl, and it means something, and it highlights the struggles of their relationship, the fact that it's kind of at the point where it needs to be, and that they love each other, right? So I really like this. I think it's very reminiscent of that, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I also find that it's kind of funny that Linden is like low-key a harem protagonist. Of course, Will Wight would not really write something like that, but Linden kind of fits that archetype, right? He's like a loser that has like very minimal personality. He ends up being overpowered in a fantasy world, and then there's a bunch of women that are around him that seem to be interested in him in some way, right? You have the tsundere character, which is kind of like Yeren. You have the Hime character, which is Mercy. You have the shy girl like Jay Chen. You have the emotionless one like Charity. And, you have all of these archetypes that could work. And I don't think Will Wight will play with that at all, because this feels more like a One Piece type story where there's romance, but it's not the main thing. And it's usually on the sides, right? Like Sanchi and Pudding and stuff like that. And the main character really isn't interested in that, but he does kind of interact with it a little bit because it is still like a Western story. So I just think it's funny. Like, I don't think that there is anyone else that would find this funny, but I just enjoy it. I think it's hilarious. And so that's it for character changes. There are some other character things that I did want to talk about. Like, maybe it was explained and I just can't remember because it's been a long time since I read Uncrowned. But and Ghostwater, but it almost feels like the Dragon faction having it out for Linden as badly as they do is disproportionate to what happened, right? Like, of course, Linden kills Carrie or whatever her name was, like Sephora's younger sister, but it's like I don't see why they care that much, because it seems like it's something that happens all the time between the different factions when they go to Ghostwater. Like, the whole point of going to Ghostwater is to fight each other and to gain powers and to develop your strength, right? And so fighting and losing people and winning against others feels pretty normal. I don't really understand exactly why the whole Dragon faction is so against Linden in general, right? Like, I guess they really aren't, but Sephora is the main person that we see. And although I understand why she hates Linden for killing her younger sister, the just psychotic way in which she goes against him and all of Malice's people because of it just feels excessive in a way that doesn't quite make sense to me. And I think maybe that's because we didn't really get to know Sephora all that much, and maybe because there's this kind of blending of the characterization of all of the Dragon faction that doesn't quite clear it up for me, right? Like, maybe the Dragon faction itself doesn't really care about Linden, but because all of their actions have to go against Malice, it looks like they care. Whereas Sephora directly cares, and she also wants to hate everyone else because she's just that kind of character, right? So I don't quite like that wasn't clear. It's not that important. I'm sure most people don't really care, but I find it a bit bothersome because it just feels a bit excessive. Like I don't know. It just feels like it's a bit much. And partially I understand he's the main character, so he's gonna have all of the opposition. I get that, but it's also the fact that the hatred or the characterization for Sephora for hating Linden is basically the same as Jay Long hating Linden earlier on, right? When he kills Jay Long's friend. And so the rehash of that kind of plot doesn't feel that exciting because it's a pretty basic concept. And Linden's already survived it once. He's going to survive it again, right? So I don't quite like that aspect of it, but I don't really think about it that much. I mean, I basically thought about it right now on the spot, right? However, the introduction and then removal of Nyan Blackflame kind of sucks, actually. On one hand, it's confusing. I thought that all of the Black Flames had died, like over 100 years ago, right? That was my understanding. So why is Nyan here? And why does he show up and then immediately get killed and disappear, and there's no explanation about anything, right? I understand that it's not that important. Basically, his reasoning to exist was to teach Linden the Dragon Descends, which is an awesome technique. It's basically the Cradle equivalent of Chidori, right? And then to have him be killed so that we learn more about the Dragon faction, which is that they suck, right? That they are horrible and that they don't deserve mercy because they don't give any to anyone else. And in fact, their policy is always scorched earth, right? Like, if you can't have it, if I can't have it, neither can you, right? So I understand that that's the point, but introducing Nyan, giving us this look at what a proper Black Flame user could be like, and developing the idea that Linden would want to interact with him and grow with him and maybe bring him onto their team, and then having him killed immediately doesn't work for me because you feel some level of sadness through Linden, right? Like, oh, Linden is sad that his, a path to power or a person that he might have grown close to has died. But at the same time, it's a character that is not important in any way beyond teaching us a technique. And so his death, it feels almost like redundant or unnecessary, which is kind of similar to my feelings for Byro and the girl Skysworn. I can't remember her name. It's like these characters could have been important and meaningful parts of the cast in some way, at least for a book, but they were just used to move the plot line along in a way that doesn't feel satisfactory enough for my taste. And I don't know, I just feel like it doesn't quite work. I do like the addition of him. I think it was cool. It was like an unexpected surprise, and it was also a cool way to teach Linden his new Chidori technique, right? The Dragon Descents. But it just, I don't know, it feels like there could have been more there, and the fact that there wasn't is a bit of a waste on Will Wight's part, in my opinion. But that's just me. In terms of world building, I had quite a few questions coming up while I was reading this, and partially it's because it's been a long time since I read through it, although I've read most of these books in this sequence, in the set a few times. It's been a long time since I read the first 6, and so some things I don't really remember, and going on the wiki would give me the answers, but if I do that, I might actually end up getting spoilers, and I prefer not to do that, right? So the first kind of question I had is, how many continents are there? I know that the Ashwin continent is where the story takes place, right? Like, that's where Malice is queen, and that she shares it with Seseth Kunas, right? The dragon god, right? But how many other worlds are there, or how many other continents are there? I know Rose Gold exists, right? That's where the Aurelius family is from, and that's where Reagan Shen also lives, right? So that's somewhere else, far away, and that seems to be like the Europe equivalent continent, right? Where Ashwind is like the Asia equivalent. I don't know if there's any others. I think there's Iceflower and Everwood, but is the Nine Cloud City its own continent, or is it part of Ashwin? And that's the part that I don't really get. It's also not that important, but if the characters are supposed to be traveling across the world, I think it'd be a bit better if I knew what that actually means, because it's a bit confusing, and I want to know where the story is located most of the time, right? It's pretty easy. Most of the time it's in Ashwind, right, in the locations around where Malice is queen, but it'd be nice to know the relative location of other places, right? And so Ashwind is kind of like Asia in the Middle East, right? So Malice is a Japanese-style character. Linden and company are like a Korean-style group of characters, and I'm mostly basing this on the fact that they have 3 names and clan structures, whereas the Malice family and the other groups have like a more Chinese or Japanese kind of style to them. And then obviously the dragons mostly seem to be Middle Eastern inspired, especially like Egyptian type stuff. I mean, Seseth Kunas, his name sounds like something a pharaoh would have, right? And Sephorath as well. And these characters have that kind of like Middle Eastern, Persian, Egyptian kind of vibe. And then Rose Gold, of course, is kind of Europe. That's where all the characters that seem to be like Western looking are from. Ethan, he's like your basic white dude, right? And Reagan Shen is technically a lion, but he also kind of portrays himself as like this like massive white man. And then Everwood, I guess, is like India. Like, I don't know, they have like that giant tree thing that is like their emperor, right? Or sorry, their monarch. And she does give me this kind of like Buddha-esque kind of vibe to her, but I don't know if that's correct at all, right? Also, I think Draw says something about how they use things differently over there. Like the way that they practice the sacred arts is weird over there compared to how it is over here. And I don't know what that means exactly. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I would assume that that's kind of India. So what are all the other continents like, if there are any, right? I'm just curious about that. And if you guys disagree with my kind of like, mapping from Cradle to real world, feel free to disagree down in the comments. It's not a big deal. I would actually like it. I think it'd be fun to talk about, right? The other thing is that different levels to the system, to the power system, feel a bit confusing, or maybe I would say that they feel a bit frivolous, because, there's aura, there's vital aura, there's madra, there's spirits, there's all of these different words, and I don't know what they really mean, right? So everyone has madra, right? That's understandable, but do they get madra from aura, or is aura something else, right? I don't understand that, or maybe I missed the explanation for it. And of course, spirits are different, but can you affect spirit through your workings of your madra, right? And then in terms of the meaning of words, right? Like cycling, forging, binding, working, all of this stuff, like what does it really correlate to? I guess cycling means that's how you develop aura, or that's how you develop madra in your system. Forging is when you make it into something, right? And soul smithing is when you take real, like things that have madra and you force them into an object, right? And then binding, I don't know what that is. And working, I'm also unclear on, like, if Linden is making the Dragon Descends, is he working madra or is he forging madra? Like, what is the difference there, right? And of course, there's also like subcategories for things, right? Like when Linden uses the empty palm and he just hits you, that's a striker technique. But if he forces the echo, that's a forger echo technique. And so why is that different? Like, I don't understand. Or maybe I just don't remember with clarity, right? So if you guys know, let me know down below. But I don't like it, particularly because it's just kind of annoying. Like if you don't remember the meaning of each word, you kind of trip over yourself while you're reading. And it's not that important because broadly speaking, you understand he's doing something and then you hear the technique name and then you're like, oh, okay, that's what he did. But it doesn't work properly for immersion, at least for me, because it makes me kind of fall out of the story because I want to know what the heck they're saying that they're doing, right? Like I want to be able to picture what that looks like in my head. And, you know, in the animatic or in animation, this will be less important. The characters might say that they're doing something and then you'll just know that they're doing it because you'll see it being done. But in the writing, it's important to understand what each of these things means because I want to know exactly what they're doing, right? But again, it's not that important. It's just like a nitpick kind of situation that's mostly a me problem that applies to this book, right? And then finally, I would just want to talk about the fact that this is basically really influenced by the big three. The big three being the big three manga and anime that Shonen Jump had in the early 2000s and that basically modernized the manga scene here in the States, right? That would be One Piece, Bleach, and Naruto. Although here in the States, it wasn't until recently that One Piece has really been getting the love it deserves, where most people my age and in their 20s would be big fans of Naruto and Bleach. A lot of them probably weren't that, you know, interested in One Piece until the last couple of years, or it was just a fandom that was a lot quieter throughout the years until recently, right? And I recently joined the One Piece fandom myself, so I was mostly a Naruto guy growing up. I didn't know about Bleach, but I wasn't that interested in it. And I had been thinking about this while I was reading through this set of books the other day. It's that the influence here is really, really massive. Particularly, I think that the storytelling or the world building is more Naruto based, with some of the, you know, groups and stuff being more Bleach based. And then One Piece gets some representation here and there, mostly in terms of character vibes and kind of concepts that are associated with the characters, more so than like what the characters kind of look like, right? Like, Linden to me reads like Rock Lee if he had Uchiha vibes, because the Uchiha, you know, initially are represented as blue, white, and red, but later, basically every Uchiha has red, black, and white or gray as their color scheme, right? And that's Linden and Yeren as well, and basically anyone that's related to the Black Flame Empire, right? But Linden has that kind of like Rock Lee, like, I gotta be the best, I gotta continuously practice, I gotta train, kind of mindset, but he has that like Uchiha, like I'm low-key kind of a edgelord kind of vibe to him, right? Not necessarily like Sasuke. I think that Sasuke has like a very angry vibe to him that really fits more someone like Pride, right? But he does have that kind of like Shishui, or what the fuck is his name? Sushui? You know, Itachi's best friend. I can't remember his name. Or Itachi kind of vibe to him, where he's like not quite depressed, but definitely much more inward about himself. And he's kind of like a genius, but not super there yet, right? And of course, with Draws, he basically has the Tsukuyomi and the Rasengan, and the Sharingan techniques that all the Uchiha have, right? Not necessarily in the exact same way, but pretty similar, right? Whereas Yaren, to me, reads more like Rukia from Bleach, with that Uchiha kind of vibe to her, mostly in her clothing. Just the fact that she wears black and red, and that she carries a sword with her in a big knotted belt, right? Like, that looks like Sasuke from Naruto Shippuden, most of all, right? And the fact that she has that, like, cursed energy kind of concept as well, she does kind of seem like very, very inspired by Sasuke, right? Since he also has a curse mark, and he's constantly fighting against it. And then when he doesn't, he develops this, like, negative stuff. And of course, Lee Markuth also has the hand wings, like Sasuke does in his curse mark form. Ethan doesn't really match any of the characters, in my opinion. I guess he kind of is like Guy Sensei in his like boisterousness, but he's actually more like Kakashi, if anything, right? Because Kakashi is a character that has a lot of sadness and depth to him, but Ethan has like the veneer of someone like Guy or a Jiraiya, that kind of like boisterous, I'm always fun, I'm always excited, I'm always happy kind of vibe. But really, especially later into the story, he does become more of a Kakashi-esque mentor character, who's someone that has a lot of deep pain that he kind of hides, right? But Kakashi also has this idea that, you know, those that leave their friends behind are worse than scum, right? And Ethan, his whole deal is that he wants to develop a group of people that can all be friends, that can all fight against the horrors of the world and beyond, right? And so I do think that Ethan really pattern matches the best to Kakashi, with a little bit of Guy or Jiraiya thrown in there as well, right? And then if we move on to the Akura clan, I'm not quite sure, like, you know, the clan itself doesn't really map to anything, although you could argue maybe they kind of map to something like the Hyuga clan, right? Something like that, where there's like a pretty hard-ass leader at the top, and they're very protective of their abilities, and they have this very annoying way of interacting with each other that's all based on hierarchy, which we see with Neji quite a lot. But Pride does give me more of a Sasuke kind of vibe. Like, he's just angry, and he's very, you know, able and kind of a genius in his own right, but he's constantly struggling with, like, interacting with people. I guess with his relationship with Mercy, he would actually be more like Neji. And Neji and Sasuke are kind of like two sides of the same coin. They're not even two sides. They're basically the same side, but slightly different, kind of. But Pride just kind of strikes me more as a Sasuke type character, where Mercy doesn't really match with anyone from Naruto particularly, but I feel like she does match with someone from Bleach, right? Something like Orihime, who's like a happy character who wants to bring joy and good to others, and her abilities kind of are not really representative of that, like the way that Orihime's are, but they're kind of similar. But also, Orihime's abilities are actually kind of similar to Charity's, right? Although I don't think that there's any, like, healing, like, attacks that any characters have, like the way Orihime does in Cradle. But Mercy and some of the female members of the Akira clan really do give you that Orihime kind of vibe when you put them all together, right? And then Zeal, of course, is kind of like Shikamaru. He's just kind of like, this is a drag. I fucking hate being here, but I'm really good at my job, so I'm going to continue to be here. But he also looks like Loki, which I never understood. I guess Loki was really popular while Will White was coming up with the Zeal character or something. I guess that was in the middle of the MCU era. So maybe that's where the character, vibe comes from, because he has, like, the horns at the top. He has a golden... he has green horns, but his vibe is, like, when I think of Zeal, I think of, like, Loki from the first Thor movie, but, like, a little bit shorter and stockier, with a shield and a hammer instead of, like, whatever scepter he has. But his vibe is very much Shikamaru, right? And then Orthos and Blue don't really fit this setup at all, but they kind of function as, like, the ninja animals from Naruto. Or I guess Orthos more specifically kind of matches something like a tailed beast, right? Because he has a special power. Linking with him gives Linden power, and the power that he has is actually kind of corrosive and negative, in the same way that Kuruma's chakra is negative towards Naruto, right? At least initially, and then they develop a friendship and have that kind of vibe, right? But also, Orthos is a wise old animal like companion, and Blue is a spren. Literally, she's just the same as Syl from Stormlight Archive. So I get it. And then Fury, who's the other character I like, is basically Garp from One Piece, especially in the more modern interpretation of Garp. But I guess when this was written, that kind of interpretation of Garp didn't really exist yet. But in like before Dressrosa and like Water 7 and stuff, post Enies Lobby, Garp and Fury do have that same kind of vibe where it's like, we just gotta fight, and we're gonna be boisterous, and we're gonna have fun, and we're gonna have ideals and thoughts, but we're gonna hold them to ourselves and allow others to do whatever they want, right? But Fury definitely has that same vibe where Garp is a character that is a hero for the Marines, but he actually disagrees with them. Fury, in the same way, is a hero for the Kura clan, but he disagrees with his mother a lot, right? And so you get to see that the idea is very much like the big three turned into something else. And I really like it. I think it's a bit disappointing that One Piece is a lot less prominent in the story, but at the same time, it's still there here and there in some kind of elements to the story, right? Like Jay Long is the same as Katakuri. Like his vibe is Katakuri. He hides his face like Katakuri because Katakuri has a nasty, like crazy mouth. And I can't think of anything else specifically that's like that. I guess the 8-Man Empire has kind of vibes similar to One Piece and like the way that they interact, but you don't get to see that directly in this set of books. You see that later, right? I'm trying to think of other stuff. I guess Reagan Shen kind of has a bit of a vibe that's similar to like the Admirals, right? But otherwise, I can't think of anything else that's directly like One Piece. Like, I can kind of feel the vibe is there, but not quite, right? And of course, there's a little bit of subtext here that involves Dragon Ball, which is the granddaddy of the big three, with the Turtle Sage kind of vibe. Of course, there is no Turtle Sage, but Linden becomes a sage by the end, and he has a turtle. So he's a Turtle Sage, right? Also, the Dragon's Breath is basically a Kamehameha with extra steps. Same vibe, right? Especially when he like uses it like this, right? Because Linden usually talks about shooting it out of one hand, which is kind of how Vegeta sends those like flying discs out, right? But every once in a while, he says that he uses both hands to throw a massive one, right? So that's kind of what it is. But yeah, that's all I had to say about this book. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think down below. What do you think about the big three influences on Cradle? And thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys next time.